Hey guys, it's Dandi. I just wanted to do a quick video about the differences between self-care and aftercare. I realized that in my last video, I did mention that especially after a scene, that you will need some more self-care. I just wanted to kind of clarify my thought on that, because I don't necessarily think that was a complete thought. Had a great comment from somebody talking about their submissives and the self-caring and also aftercare. So this spawned this idea for this video. So I guess the self-care, of course, it's broader than I mentioned. I only mentioned a very little bit of it. For me personally, I don't obviously just do self-care after a scene or on my own, a week later from a scene or from sub drop. I self-care all the time. Doesn't matter if I'm playing a lot. Doesn't matter if I'm in a dynamic or I'm not. Of course, if you're playing more actively, sometimes the self-care stuff comes into play more often. But I think all people should be taking care of themselves, aware of the things that make them, their cup filled, that they need, and really just aware of that. But that's very different than aftercare. But I want to clarify that, yes, you can use self-care after a scene to some extent, not necessarily right after, but a few days after or even that night of course I'm not policing anyone's self-care, but I just wanted to talk about what aftercare was. So again, I'm not really trying to lecture or teach anything, just my opinion. For me, I used to not play a lot, very impact play like. I don't consider myself a masochist, and I don't consider myself someone who really likes pain. I've started to develop more of a taste for this, especially with Master. But up until 6 months ago, I wasn't big into pain. So a lot of the scenes that I tended to do would be rope or sensation play with some sex play and with some power exchange elements. And, maybe wax play or forced orgasm. A lot of the things that I tend to do aren't necessarily things that are going to get me in a typical subspace. I would say I get in a subspace from those things, but it's different than what some people think about that, because it's not from pain, right, or from impact. So when I'm doing aftercare, well, let's backtrack. So when I am thinking about a scene that I'm going to do, or someone asks me to play, and this is more specifically not when you're in a dynamic, especially in an MS dynamic, I feel like there's less oh, hey, we're going to do this thing, When you're in an MS, of course there's consent, but there's not as much negotiations as when you're established. Or as much, oh, hey, I'm going to do this thing. Master says, hey, we're going to do this thing. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we have a conversation about it, but I'm not negotiating like I would with somebody that I just started playing with. Or that I'm not in a dynamic with. I want to be clear, it's still negotiation in an MS. It's just different. So when someone asked me to do a scene, then I would think about what are the things that I want to do, right? And have the negotiation. But in my negotiation, I would say very clearly, these are the things that I believe I would like for aftercare. These are the things I typically like for aftercare. This is subject to change, depending on how the scene goes. I could decide that I, want less of this, want none of that, would like to go home. There's always that chance of you're going to get triggered in a scene and not want aftercare, or you're going to get triggered in a scene and need really intense aftercare. Every scene and every person's different. So basically I make sure to negotiate that into a scene. So that, and then the person will say if they're okay with that, they agree with that, what they need. I think it's important that tops also need aftercare, so you should have a conversation about that. When I'm topping, the occasional time when I top, I really like to ask, what kinds of things do you need for aftercare? What exactly does that look like for you? How do you normally feel after a scene? Please communicate with me after the scene if you're having any issues or anything. I also really like to discuss how the scene went. That's something I also negotiate. I guess this is kind of turning into a video more about negotiations. But let me get back to the part about the aftercare. So aftercare is one of those, anyone who doesn't know what aftercare, I guess I should have explained. Aftercare is after a BDSM scene, after a scene, in a variety of different things that you could negotiate. It's basically slowing down, kind of connecting with the person you had a scene with, and receiving some kind of care. So a lot of people like cuddles. Some people have like a special onesie that they wear, or they need to just be held, or they need to just talk, or maybe they need chocolate, or maybe they don't want to do anything. Like maybe they just want to have a hug and walk away. I mean, there's a variety. And of course, aftercare is really important, and like I said, very important to negotiate and be aware of. But I do think that it's very, very different than self-care. I guess it is a form of self-care in a way, if you're going to get technical with it. But aftercare and self-care are typically, in my mind, two different things. So that's just my quick opinion on that. Again, this is just my opinion. I'm not stating I have the true answer or true opinions. Just these are my opinions. I would love to hear what you guys think, and what do you like for aftercare? What works for you? And also, are you in like when you're in a different kind of scene, do you need a different kind of aftercare? Like for people who are in humiliation, is there a different kind of like aftercare you need when you're doing a humiliation scene? Or, if you're really a masochist, is it different if you're doing like a very masochistic scene versus a scene that's different, maybe with rope or something with less pain? I would love to hear what your opinion is. As always, I love getting your comments. It's going to be a little crazy here for the next 2 weeks because Master's moving, so I may not be recording as much. But feel free to message me. I love to hear from you. Love and light, guys.